What happens after we die? This is the question that has followed humanity for thousands of years. It is a simple question to ask. It is an impossible question to answer. All of our stories, all of our science, and all of our faith seem to gather around this one point of darkness. People tell stories of ghosts and heavens. Scientists study the slow decay of the brain. Priests speak of eternal peace or eternal fire. And some say there is nothing at all. All of it feels like knocking on the door of a vast, dark room. We knock, and we listen for a reply that never quite comes. The silence itself becomes an answer for some, a new question for others. Listen. Imagine a quiet night. The air is still and cold, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. The stars hang like scattered silver coins against an endless black velvet cloth. Far away, a lone bell rings, its sound traveling across the sleeping landscape, clear and solitary. In that profound quiet, countless minds turn to the same question. The question of the end. It is a thought that wakes old, primal fears, the kind that live deep in our bones. But it also lights a strange and stubborn hope. We all want to know if someone or something is waiting for us on the other side of that final breath. There are facts we can hold on to, things we can check and measure. The heart stops beating. The body grows cold. Cells begin to change, to break down, their purpose fulfilled. These things are true, recorded in medical journals and textbooks. Doctors can watch a brain slow down on a monitor, its electrical storms fading into a quiet sea. They can measure precisely how the body fails, piece by piece. Still, in some of those final moments, people report something else entirely. They speak of impossibly bright lights. They describe a feeling of warmth and overwhelming love. They tell of seeing loved ones who have long since passed. These are called near-death experiences. They are not proof, but they are real reports from real people. Some places in our world seem to hold strange clues, silent testaments to this enduring question. Old tombs, sealed for centuries, hide objects carefully placed with the dead for a journey we cannot see. Ancient maps, drawn on brittle papyrus, mark routes to underworlds and celestial realms. In the deep, dark caves of our ancestors, handprints on the walls seem to reach out from a distant past, a message left for the future. Now, let us look at the main ideas people have. Each one is different, a unique path into the great unknown. Each has its own kind of evidence, its own kind of doubt. Think of them as four doors standing in a long, dark, and silent hallway. We do not have the key to any of them, but we can stand at each door for a moment. We can press our ear against the cold wood. We can listen for any sound that might come from within. Perhaps we will hear a voice. Perhaps we will hear a song. Or perhaps we will hear nothing but the sound of our own heart beating against the silence. It is in the act of listening that the journey begins. Before we open the first door, we must acknowledge the weight of our own experience. We have all known loss. We have stood in quiet rooms and held cold hands. The first theory is the simplest and perhaps the coldest. It is the idea that nothing remains. This idea says that death is the final, absolute end of your story. The body breaks down, returning to the earth from which it came. The mind, that complex and beautiful machine of thought and feeling, simply stops. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. There is no voice calling your name. There is only silence. A deep, profound, and final silence that stretches on for all of eternity. It is an idea that can feel stark, even brutal, in its simplicity. It strips away all the layers of hope and story we have built. Many scientists and philosophers hold this view. They point to the brain as the source of all consciousness. Our thoughts, our memories, our love, our sense of self, electrical signals, chemical reactions between neurons. When the brain ceases to function, when the cells die and the electricity fades, then the mind must necessarily end as well. It is a logical conclusion based on everything we can observe and measure about the physical world. The idea that death is a simple off switch is an assumption, not a proven fact. And so, even behind this plainest of doors, a whisper of a question remains. It lives in the heart of many religions and spiritual traditions. It says that a part of you, an essential part, survives the death of the body. People call this part by many names: the soul, the spirit, the Atman, the self. This essence is believed to be immortal, and after death, it flies free. It may travel to a new place, a realm of peace, a realm of judgment. Or it may return to this world, to be born again into a new body, to live another life. It is an idea of profound hope and consequence. This is the world of the near-death experience, or NDE. Countless people across the globe have reported similar events when they were clinically dead or close to it. They often describe the sensation of floating above their own body, watching doctors, watching nurses. They report moving through a dark tunnel, drawn toward a brilliant, loving light. It seems to bridge the gap between life and what might come after. People describe overwhelming peace and the absence of pain. Meeting spiritual beings. Seeing spirits of relatives who had already died. A common feature is the life review. A person's entire life flashes before their eyes, not as judgment, but as understanding. Dr. Raymond Moody, one of the first systematic researchers, noted their consistency. He wrote, "Despite the wide variation in the circumstances surrounding close calls with death, there is a striking similarity among the accounts of the experiences themselves." The fourth and final door leads us to the very edge of our understanding. This is a newer idea, born from the strange world of quantum physics and consciousness studies. It suggests that consciousness might not be produced by the brain at all. Instead, it proposes that the brain acts more like a radio or a television set. It does not create the broadcast, it simply receives it. The signal, consciousness itself, may originate from a larger, non-local field. A universal consciousness that permeates all of space and time. Our individual minds are just temporary receivers, tuned to a specific frequency. This is a bold and radical thought. If the brain is just a receiver, then the death of the brain does not necessarily mean the end of the signal. Consciousness could continue to exist without the body, perhaps rejoining the universal field from which it came. As the pioneering physicist Sir James Jeans once said, the universe begins to look more like a great thought than like a great machine. This door opens not onto a place, like heaven, but onto a different state of being, emerging with a cosmic intelligence that is far beyond our comprehension. We stand again in the cold night air, the four doors of the hallway now behind us. The distant bell has fallen silent. The only sound is the wind whispering through the bare branches of trees. The cold, logical silence of nothingness. The ancient comfort of a soul's journey. The strange, luminous bridge of near-death visions. Or the radical, expansive idea of consciousness as a part of the universe itself. Each choice tells a story about who we are and what we value. Each path offers its own kind of meaning. No final, definitive answer sits here on the table for us to pick up. The mystery remains. Perhaps the point is not to solve it. The best we can do is listen to all the stories. We can measure what is measurable. We can tell the true things we find. But we can also hold a space for wonder, for things beyond our instruments. The mystery matters.